Ready to go. I'd like to call this meeting to order, the Boardwalk and Beach Committee. It is Tuesday, October 25th, 2022. It is 2 p.m. and let's have a roll call first. Brian Hancock.
Here.
Craig Deere.
Here.
Jimmy Horty.
Here.
Steve Kirsten.
Here.
Patricia Davis.
Here.
Kathleen Honey Fisher.
Here.
And I'm the chairman, Jay Legree. I'm here, so we have a quorum. We can do business. And let us do approval of minutes first. Have we all had a chance to read the minutes? And do I hear a motion to accept or to decline or to
So moved.
correct?
Second.
All in favor? It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
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 The minutes were approved and didn't have any correspondence that was related to any items on our agenda. People talk, give you hints and talk to you about things, but as far as the agenda goes, we didn't get any correspondence. And I don't, do you have any that's came in just today or anything, Ann?
No.
Thank you. What we'd like to do at this time is to have a end of summer update from our Public Works Director, Mr. Kevin Williams, and we're anxious to hear what he has to say. We have questions, so it'll be a great discussion.
For those of you that viewed the board meeting on Friday, you'll probably see a lot of repeat from last week. So it's just a shortened version of that. It's focused mainly on the beach and boardwalk for your folks. So let's start it off like a lion. You know, the old comes in like a lion, goes out like a lamb. Not so much for us. It was a brutal summer, as you know, right? We started on Mother's Day with a pretty good storm that took away a good 3 or 4 feet of dune, almost all the full length of the beach. A lot of the beach itself got moved offshore a little bit, so we had narrow beaches, damaged dune crossings, fences down right before the start of the season. So, you know, it was all hands on deck trying to get the fences put back up. That's what it kind of looked like at the time. You can see it just completely washed out all the dune crossings, took out all the, you know, kind of the dune safety fence, keeping people out of the dunes, that kind of thing. And it was all up and down the coast. So DENREC was pretty well committed down at the Indian River Inlet, which was, I guess, at risk of having the bridge collapse, or at least have weakening of the support structure for the bridge. So they were really focused down there. So we were kind of on our own. We got permission from them to actually push some sand around and do some work in the crossings that normally we aren't allowed to do. That's a DENREC function. But, you know, because we have the resources and the ability that they let us go out there, we put up, you know, a lot of dune fence. They provided us fencing, which was good, but we put up a lot of that dune fencing again to keep people off the escarpments. We were able to at least make safe all the dune crossings, so we got a lot of sand pushed up as it started coming back in, pushed it up to make the dune crossing safe. The one down by the condos, they brought that surf, they brought sand in. We could push that down to make that ramp safe because of the scouring that had happened all there. So in many places, 4, 5, 6 feet worth of escarpment, which took about, like I said, 3 or 4 feet of the dune itself, took it all out. But by that next week, we had the crossings open again. You know, we fought the narrow beach all year, and it caused us to do some things a little bit differently. But I think we adapted as we needed to throughout the summer to try to make it as workable as we could. But, you know, a lot of those high tides kept coming all the way back up to the dune. So we saw a lot of people sunbathing in the dune crossings or just kind of hanging out. Maybe they came up to the boardwalk or whatever at peak high tide. But then as it went back out, low tides were great. I mean, the dunes or the beaches were extremely wide. And the little kids love the little, pools that develop and all those things. So I think everybody made the best of it. It certainly was tough for our guys. The thing that kind of made it possible, I talked about this Friday with the folks, is Sharon before, as she was leaving, and then Evan, when he took over, allowed us to develop an incentive pay, because we have not had a full staff in the summer for the entire time I've been here. So pre-COVID, we couldn't get enough folks to come in and then stick with us throughout the summer. By the end of August, we were down 3, 4, 5, 6 people. So trying to do everything we like to do with that reduced staff was tough. But in this case, we developed an incentive program. First, she allowed us to, and Evan allowed us to reward folks that brought people in. So if they were able to bring 1 or 2 guys in, we gave them a bonus as long as that person then lasted through the summer. So everybody, the 15th of September was our key date. If you made it till 15th September, then you were golden. Whoever recommended you come in or brought you in then got a bonus for that. And then we gave all of our seasonals and part-timers an incentive to stay. So plus for every hour they worked. So for every hour they worked, if they stayed until September 15th, they got a nice little bonus at the end. So it also encouraged you to stay. It also encouraged them to sign up for some of the extra shifts when things like the storms happen. So they were more than willing to work extra hours, because each one of those hours added more to their incentive, in September. So it worked great for us. We lost 1 guy is all, and it was really for misconduct more than anything else. It wasn't that they kind of gave up on the job or got disgruntled with the job, or whatever. So I thought it worked great for us and allowed us to do a bunch of things that we had been wanting to do for a while. First of those was the recycling on the boardwalk. We wanted to give that a shot. We had bought a bunch of cans and got the electric vehicle and everything and been ready to go for a couple of years, but this was the first time we had staffing that could do it. So we put 130 or so recycle cans out on the boardwalk, and then started the program, I guess, just prior to 4th of July, or I'm sorry, Memorial Day. Our results were not as we had hoped. As you can see, the numbers just were not very good. Not quite sure what happened in August and September. I think it was probably more on our guys that just got kind of fed up kind of dealing with it, right? So a little lack of discipline on our part, or a little lack of direct oversight would have helped. But even still, if you look at what we had in June and July, when it was kind of a fresh program and the guys were still excited about doing it, it was in the low 20% for good bags. There are some things that we did, our process, that might have helped to the contamination, because we didn't start out by just, as they're coming down the boardwalk pulling bags, we didn't just pull the bag, tie it up, throw it in the thing. So they would physically pull the lid, look inside, see if it was half full or more. Then they would, if it was, then they would say, well, okay, we're going to throw it. If there wasn't much in it, they would just leave it. So they look at it. If it's over half full and it looks good, they'll bag it up, put it in the recycle pile. If it's got contamination, they'll bag it up, put it in the trash pile. So we've deduced that there is a problem with leaving it in the can. If it's less than half full and we leave it there, the longer it sits there, the more probability of somebody throwing something in there that they shouldn't have. So not quite sure how to quantify that, but we'll have to think through maybe some different procedures to limit the time that it's in there, but without throwing a whole bag out. If there's like 2 cans in it. So we'll work through that in the wintertime to see if we have better recommendations or come up with better ways to try to deal with it. We think the numbers in June and July were pretty good. I mean, they're good numbers. Not that we like the numbers, but they're good. It's good data, because they were pretty conscientious early on about making sure they looked at their bags, pulled the ones that needed to be pulled, and put them in the appropriate pile. So, somewhere around 20 to 25% maybe is a realistic number of the percentage of contaminated versus good bags that we could send to the recycling. So not nearly as good as we were hoping, but gives us some data to plan with and work toward. The other thing that enabled us the incentive and full staffing enabled us to do was we were able to get the cans back onto the beach. Remember in the last couple of years, we've only been able to put cans kind of in the dune crossing. So, it restricts the dune crossing, because that way we could empty them and dispose of them from the boardwalk. Our guys could just go down the crossing, pull them, bring them back. But we think it's better to have it on the beach. It's easier for our visitors and beachgoers, to get to the cans, and we think they're more likely to put them in rather than haul it a little bit farther away. So we like getting them down on the beach. Took a little while to get them there because the beach was pretty narrow. So we didn't really have the beach to put them out because the surf's coming all the way up to the dune. So initially in the summer, we still kept them in the dune crossings, but as soon as when the beach came back and the high tide was a little bit farther out, then we put them back down on the beach. So that enabled us to do something that Mike had been wanting to do, is have the evening crew go down at night and empty those bags, pull the bags off the beach. Because in the past, what they had done is they couldn't physically get there. So they would pull the bags, the guys would walk down, pull the bag, and just stack it by the cans. So we had those full bags, could have been overnight from, say 7 or 8 o'clock at night, all the way till the next morning, and then we'd get them with the morning crowd. But it worked out very well. We could send the night guys down there. They could walk and then walk the stuff up. In many cases, we could get most cases, we could get the wagon down and throw it and clear the beach because, we have a big crowds in the morning. They go to watch the sunrise. And with a very narrow beach, a bunch of trash bags and everything else, it's just not as appealing as we would like. So by getting them out, we just think it's a much more appealing beach for the summer or for the morning crowd that goes down to watch the sunrise. Because it's very peaceful down there, as you know, and people just like to relax and watch the sun come up. So that helped in that, and I think we didn't have issues with the foxes or the gulls or anything else getting into the bags and tearing the stuff up. So we think that was a success, and we plan to continue that if we have the staff that can manage that. We've had a lot of requests for the access mats that run across the dune. Back in 2020, we had about 10 in various places where we judged that they were either really steep or soft or get a lot of business. So we wanted to make sure we had mats down there for them. They are a lot of work to maintain, but people love them, right? So then the next year, one of our elected representatives funded a bunch more. So we about doubled them. We went to, I think, 21 2 years ago. In 21, I think we had 21. And we kind of spaced them out, as you can see. Again, no matter wherever we did not have one, Steve, someone would ask for one, Steve, at the crossing they use all the time, even though there's another one probably 10 yards down the boardwalk, Steve. But they are just very popular. We understand that, and it's just a fact of life that we're going to use these because people do love them so much. They do become, and then again, last year, then I think Schwarzkopf or Lopez or maybe a collective, funded 10 more. So now we've got, 32, I think, out of our 39 crossing sites have the access mats. And now, the ones that still don't, I'm a believer that they really don't need them. I mean, they're, Rehoboth Avenue, so it's 10 yards, it's hard packed, and you're right on the beach. So this will probably be it, unless something strange happens or the dunes change. It'll be interesting to see how the dunes and dune crossings look next year, and if it's still appropriate in the locations we have them. But they're big hits with the public, and the impact to us is that, especially when we had such trouble with the dune crossings at the beginning of the year, and now we've got all this much softer sand that's been pushed up. They're not kind of compacted at all. Virtually every morning you could come out and the sand would slough down, and then the mats would kind of bend, or they'd have a hump in them. So it took the skid steer and the skid steer operator and 2 guys were on the beach every morning to smooth out as many as they could before it got too crowded. They'd have to roll the mat up, 10 or 15 feet, smooth out the end of the crossing in, and then put that mat back down. But because they're so popular, I think that's just something, we're gonna have to take for granted now and do. So it worked out well again, because we had a full staff and we could dedicate those guys. But that's just a fact of life now. I think that we're gonna deal with those. But again, we got 31 or 32 out of 39 crossing sites, so that's pretty good. Now, we lost a couple with the later storm because they were still down. Right? As soon as we start taking them out, people go, "Why'd you take that out?" So we started to like every third one out or something to begin with, and we took another one another week or two later. We took another 10 out maybe. So we still had 8 or 10 out on the dunes when the big storm hit, in the fall. And if you saw the Boardwalk Plaza hotel camera and the one right there, and the access mats flopping up and down and bending around and got thrown, and then one down at the north end just got completely covered for about 30 feet up into the crossing. And so then we're digging that out by hand, trying to get those things out of there. So that tension between, getting them out before the storm happens or the weather changes, or leaving them out while people are still using them is real. But just bear with us that we're going to continue, we think, to start to remove them, several at a time, because we can't leave them down forever because, the guys are starting on Christmas lights already. So, they come off the beach, get those away, get really, as soon as we start thinning out the cans and the mats, and then they're now checking Christmas lights start putting those up. So it's pretty busy, and we get a little, we do get some comments that we've pulled some too early, but in this case, we let probably 8 stay a week too long. And knowing Mike, we won't let that happen next year. Well, we'd rather, I think, put up with the comments that we should have left them out longer. And then, in October, we got the remnants of Ian, and it took another 4 to 6 to 8 feet in places from the dune. So there's some out there that are pretty well eaten away, and a lot of fencing, a lot more debris with this storm than we had in the spring. Fence debris, the posts, it was just very interesting to see. I mean, those wooden fence posts that are holding the dune fencing up would just snap at the bottom. They wouldn't pull out of the sand. They wouldn't blow over. They would just snap right at the bottom. So the force of that water is just an amazing thing to watch. If you go out there today, you can kind of see Mother Nature's starting to bring some of it back. But DENREC has decided, they let us again get on to do the crossing, so they're all safed up when big crowds expected this weekend. But we did not go back and put fencing up along the ocean side of the dunes where the escarpments are. We're going to wait, and then when the beach nourishment comes this winter, hopefully, then that contractor will put all that fencing back up. So it'll be all, downside of getting it all, or the upside of getting it all torn out is we will probably get all new if we get the beach replenishment. So I know DENREC was working with the Corps because they had already advertised for the beach replenishment, but now they had to adjust quantities because they need a lot more sand than they were thinking, a lot more fence materials and that kind of thing. So not quite sure what their timeline is for getting a contract awarded and then the guy on site to start pumping sand. Then we got to fight to tell them to start in the north and work their way south, not south and work north. But all those things are, we're talking with them pretty regularly to find out what and when they're going to be hopefully on site pumping sand. The only other thing I want to mention before we go to questions is we had several instances this year of the high bacteria levels, when DENREC comes out and does the sampling. First ones we've had in probably 3 years, I think, if I remember the dates correctly. And probably the first one we ever had up on the north end at Grenoble, where it comes out of the lake. So we immediately did a bunch of sampling with our consultant GHD, came back out, they pulled a bunch of samples. They were here the morning of when I and Ian hit, and trying to pull samples as it started to rain, because it happens really when it rains. So the birds and whatever, poop all over the place, and then it gets kind of washed into the pipes, but as soon as it rains, then it flushes right out there. And if they happen to come on the day of the rain, as it starts to rain, it starts to wash that out, then our levels can be pretty high. So that happened to us, I think, 3 occasions this year where the bacteria levels were pretty high. So they guided us to, post advisories for the thing. Now, the other thing that we learned this year that we weren't really aware of is they have not only do you have a point kind of reading where after the rain you get a high reading, boom, okay, the next day they come back, it takes 24 hours to get the result. Then they come back and resample, it takes 24 hours to get that result. So it's going to be closed for 48 hours, knowing full well that second 24 is already clean, right? By the time you get the result, all that's kind of flushed out. But it's just nature of the beast. So you get it for 48 hours. But what we did not know is that they also have like a 30-day running total. And if your average over that 30-day period is over a certain level, they also can issue a beach advisory. So we came very, very close this year to having that month-long kind of quantity or readings that would have really made us put out the advisories. And those advisories stay a little bit longer, because then you've got to wait until you get that 30-day average down below. And all it takes is our allowable limit, I think, is 104 somethings per something. And, we had some readings, instantaneous readings in the thousands. So it only takes one or two of those to do your 30-day average, blow it out the water. So we spent a lot of time late in the year kind of trying to analyze how to, pinpoint that. And we went through this, that first year I was here, we were kind of going through it. And the sampling results we've seen most recently, again, kind of point toward our structures that are meant for really to improve water quality. That sand filter on Wilmington Avenue seems to be really, it just, as it sits there with no water passing through it, whatever the bacteria seems to accumulate, that nice, warm, damp environment, and grow, and the water comes through there and flushes it, and boom, extremely high readings. So that, and then we've got the vault at the end of Rehoboth Avenue. So we're looking at that. They did a bunch of testing. We don't really have kind of an analysis of the test results yet, but it's something we're looking at, and we're going to try to address, at least come up with a plan this winter on what we can do to try to avoid it or treat it. The last couple of years we've been cleaning, certainly Rehoboth Avenue, we've been jetting those stormwater pipes every year for the last couple. We thought it was helping, and then again, we got surprised with a couple of hot, pops this year. So something we're looking at, not sure exactly yet what we're going to do, but certainly have taken some testing, so we'll see what the smart people tell us we can do. And that's it, other than whatever questions you might have.
First, I want to thank you. And second,
Thank you.
for the mats, yes.
You're welcome.
Yes, and wasn't the high rates of bacteria because we had such long periods in between rains?
That's certainly a contributing factor, and DENREC said, if you go that long, hot,
Not flushing it
dry,
out.
because those filters, they're sitting there, it's nice and damp in there because they're getting some moisture in there all the time. Could certainly have contributed. Yeah, certainly contributed.
Kevin, I have a question. The beach restoration project was scheduled years ago, before we even had the Mother's Day issue, and Ian and the hurricane.
Right.
And so is the plan to restore the beach, and since those two storms, we've lost, at least down the north end, 8 feet of beach easily. So is the restoration project to restore what it was prior to the storms, or just improve what exists now after the storms?
No, it's my understanding it would go back to its original configuration. So they know, they put it back to a configuration 3 years ago, and they use those same dimensions, I believe, to then configure where they're gonna pump the sand into what levels they'll bring it. So I think it'll be back to what it was 3 years ago after the replenishment, which was
That'd be great.
pretty big. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay,
We just
thank you.
keep Mother Nature offshore a little bit. Yeah.
I have another question. A couple years ago, down on the south end of the beach, there was, instead of the dune fencing, there was like poles with ropes going through those. And is that going to come back, or is that just a temporary thing?
It's my understanding that that's the new DENREC standard, so they like that because it doesn't, we kind of like the other because it kind of
Yeah, it keeps the
restricts the
sand where it
sand
is.
at the,
Right.
away out of the crossing. And if you look at the handicap crossing down by your place, it's up above the handrails. It just blows around. I think they're going to continue that. When they did these, they still kept kind of in the central area. They left, I think most of that was still fencing. But on the north and south, I think their intent is to go back to the pole and rope in as many places as they can.
Okay.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Don't go away. I haven't asked questions yet.
Oh, the question slide is no longer, no longer visible.
I had,
Yes, sir.
I had a citizen stop me today and complained about the benches. Said they were all scarred up, scraped up, and peeled off. I hadn't even noticed it so much, but maybe I hadn't been looking. Because when I walk down the boardwalk, I seem like I'm always looking at the decking and wondering how many more years we can go without doing a major reworking. But today I looked at the benches, and we really do. But on the other hand, we had 2 storms that was like blowing sandpaper.
Sandblasted.
Yeah, so I think, and do we paint every year in the wintertime?
Yes, not every bench gets a coat every year, but a vast majority do, yeah.
Everyone that needs it. And I told him that. I said, well, they're gonna get painted anyway. And his reply was, oh, make sure it's good paint or something.
We noticed we got a lot of calls about them needing to be, certain ones needing to be cleaned more than we typically get. And not sure what contributed to that, but virtually every time they would call and say, hey, you should come check this bench at wherever, and we'd go out there and go, yeah, well, people are spilling stuff, or if there's a weather condition or whatever. But we got a lot more calls than normal on just, the cleanliness of the benches, which kind of surprised us.
I looked at a bunch, and it looked like the biggest problem was just the sand had just eaten
sandblasted.
off the
He started that process already. You may have seen he's swapped out a bunch already to take back and start working on before Christmas lights.
And we talked about warm-blooded animals pooping everywhere with enterics. And one of the biggest advantages to controlling enterics is to have an opportunity for dieback. If a rain event can stay in your lake for 24 hours, you get 50% dieback. And the next day, you get 50% more if the sun will come out. So I think it's just a matter of as Kevin said, just hitting it wrong. Now that doesn't count for the filters, because the filters don't have those same kinds of parameters. But for open lake water, you get enteric dieback. It's natural. All you need to do is get sunlight. In Silver Lake, which is a lot more acres than Lake Gerard, I found out that a citizen from Sea Grant had been taking samples for a long time of Silver Lake and Lake Gerard, and he's been measuring oxygen, and he's been also sending it off and measuring enterics. And I'm going to go through that because but he measured enterics on Silver Lake on 36 times I saw on his spreadsheet. So we can get some ideas. He measures once at the outfall, the weir, and then he measures once by the bridge, and he's been doing that for a long time. So we can talk about that, but that's not Beach or Boardwalk. But
Sampling we did, just to echo that, the sampling we did in both lakes, dry weather sampling here in probably early September, late August, early September, the bacteria level is extremely low. As you said, dry weather, it kind of dies off and filters out very, very quickly.
Heavy dieback within the first 2 or 3 days. If you have a clean lake and you have a pretty good oxygen count, it just dies like crazy, because the things that cause it to die are active. So there's that. But is there any ideas about changing anything about the way we handle our recycling? I know that what happens to a contaminated bag?
It ends up just going into the trash. So if you've seen them going down, they have the electric vehicle.
Yep.
They're kind of segregated within the vehicle. We originally thought we'd have 2 vehicles, just didn't seem prudent, as we were developing it, or as we were putting it into operation. So they kind of cordon off or segregate them, because you have the clear bags that have the recyclables, and then you have the dark bags that have the regular trash. So, as they would pull it and look in, if it was bad, contaminated, they'd throw it in the contaminated rack, or side anyway. But you know, no matter what, I mean, it's trash, right? So it's trash you're going to get. So maybe it saved a couple of times where people would have just put it down next to the can that was full, right? So if nothing else, it's just an extra trash can that we can go through and empty and avoid littering on the ground. But yeah, we got to come up with some other things to encourage people to do the right thing. And as you saw, the numbers in the last month is probably on us. So we got to make sure our guys are doing right as well. But you know, that 20 to 25 is probably an accurate number, what we're seeing.
What do we do then with the bags that are okay?
They go segregated back to the yard. We have a bin where we collect the good recycling. They walk up their little steps to the platform, slice the bag open, and put it down into the bin. You know, it never got really full all summer, so then we just take it over and recycle it. But Mike was talking about today. He goes, I don't know how we want to measure it because it doesn't really make sense to, you know, by weight, because we were using bags, which is a very, you know, kind of ambiguous term because you didn't pull a bag every day. Certainly some of the bags we pulled were full, some were not even half full. So that's a hard way to quantify it. But if we started getting more and more, you know, we could, if we're getting enough that we could fill a bin, take it out, weigh the bin, you could at least see that, yep, there's some financial savings as well as kind of doing the right thing. We just didn't get there this year. You know, we probably got about a half full bin is all we got for the entire summer. Yeah.
So once the recyclables are in the bin, do we dump the bin in the Blue Hen truck and take it off to Jones Crossing, or
We haul it.
we haul ourselves?
We haul it, right.
Okay, and there's no thought about changing that. We're gonna keep doing that. We'll just hopefully get more and more
Correct.
good recycling.
It gets a little touchy if we take it, let's say we were going to transfer it over to Blue Hen, let them haul it away. They look at that as a transfer station, right? And then that becomes a real issue. So we don't want to get in that game. So I think as long as we put it in a dumpster that we then take, I think we're okay.
So we took it maybe like once this summer or twice or something.
A couple times, yeah, and neither time we're full. Yeah.
But we just take it over there and leave it at their recycling acceptance area.
Right.
So that's pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
And the replenishment's gonna come from offshore, maybe a couple hundred yards or something like it always.
They've got, I know last time they had a couple of zones out in the beach because there's some with unexploded ordnance, so they don't pump from there. So they've got some of those things that are marked where they are able to take the sand. Yeah, I think most of ours is probably within 100 yards of the beach.
Any problems or any comments about the beach raking, or people still digging terrible holes and have
Every once in a while they are, yeah. It's almost, you know, a badge of honor for these guys. They're 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning, they're going down, they find something they shouldn't find. But it just gives them something to talk about. We had the one this year where he hit a hole pretty good. I don't know why he didn't. I mean, we have the lights on all of them now, so they should be able to see him. But anyway, hit the hole and it kind of threw his arm into something, and he hurt his arm, and you know, he showed up on the accident report and all that wonderful stuff. But for the most part, I mean, it's pretty benign, really. We didn't scrape up any people that I know of.
we had a pretty good summer as far as I could know, and we just hope that we can continue. And I don't think we ever hope to come out ahead on the recycling.
No.
It's just something that we do because it's a moral thing to do. And any more questions or?
Yeah. You want to give us an update on the Delaware Avenue bathrooms? I know they just opened this year, the new changing rooms.
All right, I
and-
would say update. They're done. Cross that off the list. They proved to be very successful, according to our guy that's, you know, we have a contractor that kind of sits out there whenever they're open. It said it took about 2 to 3 weeks for kind of the word to get out. So it was slow, very, very slow. Nobody's in there. And then boom, it kind of just kicked in. people coming back or word got out or whatever. But the changing rooms and the individual restrooms were extremely popular and got a lot of use. We were a little worried about the adult changing table, but we didn't get any horror stories of improper usage of the adult changing table. So we'll consider ourselves lucky. But yeah, the rooms and the individual restrooms were very, very popular.
And everything is going as expected on the Beach Patrol headquarters?
Yes, the designer, DBF, Mike Wigley, who did this building and a bunch of others, is working on the detailed design now. So we went through the concept, he briefed the concept plan to the commissioners, and gave us the okay to go ahead forward with the design. So the design is scheduled to be finished in time for this summer. If the commissioners decide to move forward with the construction, it'll be available to advertise in the fall so they could, advertise in the spring, early summer, so they could begin construction as soon after the season as possible. So with the intent of the thought being that, our estimate being that they can at least get the ground floor opened, so you'd have the restrooms opened for next summer, but probably not the interior finishes or the upstairs part. So we have to find some arrangements for the Beach Patrol until they can get that completed, either the next winter season or maybe it's safed up enough they could be doing some of that interior finish work while the restrooms are open down below. So all to be determined. We've met with both hotels, the one going in where Sirocco is, and in the Sands, we've met with them to make sure that what we're planning to do, because it does come back into the street a little bit farther away from the boardwalk, because we had to get it elevated out of the floodplain, and we know the new hotel's got a planned entryway going in off of Baltimore. So we've met with them, overlaid drawings, so I think we're in pretty good shape with the design itself. So now it's just a matter of coming up with the money. So that'll be your job, Commissioner.
And the demolition will be, when will we lose it?
As soon as we can in September of next year. So we'll declare victory on the season. It probably goes with parking, right? As soon as you stop charging parking, then we'd probably start the demo. So around the 15th or so. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Mr.
Sure.
Wade.
Anytime.
Thank you. Thank you.
Has everyone had a chance to look at the website for U.S. Wind that I sent out?
Yes.
This is not the Skipjack, but the Skipjack wind farm is not yet at the point where they can put in for their permits. U.S. Wind, who's building the Maryland wind farm, has put in to their, for their permits, and they sent the construction plan to BOEM. Did everybody watch the workshop, the wind workshop that we had? You had a chance to?
Yes.
And the U.S. Wind fellow, I think was Mr. Dunahee, I can't remember his name, but he presented at the workshop, and he works for U.S. Wind, so he knew he gave a pretty positive report, and you all have seen the questions that I sent out that the mayor wants us to discuss, and we're gonna have a little pop quiz. How many of us know how much we're paying for electricity? We are billed for kilowatt hours, and it's on every one of our bills that we get from, in my case, it's Delmarva Power. Does anybody know how much we pay per kilowatt hour for electricity?
No idea.
We pay just at 14 cents. And
But that doesn't include
it includes everything.
that includes the transportation down the lines.
That includes the supply charges and the distribution charges. The supply charges are like
phenomenal.
They're like 7 or 8 cents. And 14 cents puts us about in the middle of the range for the United States. It's not an overly expensive when it's compared to other states. Now, Hawaii's out of sight. Some of the West Coast states are out of sight. Some states that have to go a long way for their electricity are significantly more expensive than we are. And then some states are much lower. And I think it's perhaps because of their closeness to their power supply. They don't have to move it so far. And as you read, as we work on these wind farms, we discover that there are where they are because of the proximity to the population centers. That's a very popular place to put wind farms. Before we start talking about it, let's just start with honey. What should we be, in your mind, what's the, not necessarily you, but what is a problem that you're going to see? What's a benefit that we're going to be talking about? Pros and cons.
Yeah, the main problem that I see is people don't like visually. I'm sorry.
Well, I'm sorry, me too.
Yeah. The problem that I see, that I hear, is people don't like visually to sit there on the beach and see the things off in the distance. And I get that. I think there's a way to put them far enough out there that they're not really in your face. They're not that bad. But I think the real pro is that we've got to get away from fossil fuels, and we have to keep looking, and this is something we're going to have to work with.
It's clean energy.
It's clean energy, and at some point, my biggest question is, at some point, will the rates go down because it's renewable? Maybe after a couple years, the prices can go down. I'm not hearing that. I'm not hearing that from anybody.
Yeah. I've been following Dominion Energy, which is building a huge wind farm off the coast of, right at the border of Virginia and North Carolina. And they predicted that the average person would pay about $4 or $5 a month more than what they usually pay. And when they went, now we have a DENREC Department of Energy and Renewable Energy, and they get all the permits. So we're not in the permitting business with offshore wind, but we get to look at all the EPA has to send us the permit application stuff. So we're going to see everything, but we don't get to say yes or no on the permits. Probably we could do that if we want to, and that very well may happen. But right now, it's the EPA that signs off on the permits. And these folks tend to be a little bit generous to themselves when they're making the estimates on how powerful the wind turbines are, and they're very powerful. They don't talk much about how tall they are, and you never hear them talk about how much it's going to cost. So, do you folks remember when Blue Water
Yeah.
was here in 2009, I think?
Yeah.
Well, everybody's in favor of it, and including our representatives in the legislature. And so our senators and our representatives made Delmarva Power agree to purchase the energy, the electricity that was coming out of the wind farm that was going to be out here. And by the way, it was an identical location where we're going to have the Skipjack. And by the way, the Skipjack is just a little part of that whole plot. The Garden State Offshore Energy Company has the biggest part of that area. It's Area A, and they have some numbers. But Ørsted owns both Skipjack and Garden State Offshore Energy. So that is an Ørsted wind farm that we're talking about. And in their plan, which U.S. Wind has already submitted, they have to tell you about what they're getting ready to do. And it's very interesting to read that. I made a couple slides. I'm going to see if I can get it going. Because it'll surprise you what we came across. Can you see all of the, I guess we have a pointer here. Can you see all the little dots that are beside the, right here?
Jack, can you point to that on the computer so we can, because I'm not gonna be able to hear you or see you.
Okay, I hear you, Ann. Can everybody see where I'm pointing?
Yes.
This is the one that I gave the reference to in the agenda. This is the U.S. wind farm. It's called Merwind, and it's off the coast of Bethany Beach, south and east of Bethany, 12.7 miles. Now this one here is Skipjack, and Skipjack is the purple part of this. So we're talking just a little small area, but that wind farm is a lot bigger than this the Skipjack portion. And this top part, as you can see, is Garden State Offshore Energy, which is owned by Ørsted. You can see it better on this one.
Yes.
And if you look here, look at all the wind farms up the coast of New Jersey, and we're getting clear up to the bottom part of New York, and it goes clear on up to Massachusetts. So there's going to be a bunch of wind farms that are planned. These are leases that have been sold by the EPA to these companies. All of these that I know that I can see here, Ørsted North America, Ocean Wind, Atlantic Shores, these are all developers. They're developing these wind farms, and they're going to sell the energy to utilities. Now, south is not on here, but if you go south down here to North Carolina, Virginia, as I just got done saying a minute ago, those wind farms, which is a huge one, in the coast of North Carolina, Virginia, it's off the coast of Virginia Beach, is owned by a utility company. It's owned by Dominion, which is a big utility company in the South. So
Jay, those are proposed or they exist?
only one exists right now.
Okay, right.
And it is the one, and it's just a starter, and it's down south of U.S. Wind. You can't see it on this map. It's down here, and I don't think I can pull it up. No, I can't. Now, if you'll look, you can see the different colors of the ocean depth here. And here is the edge. This is the edge of the continental shelf. And when you get off this edge, it's a lot deeper. All the wind turbines that are being proposed are all anchored to the bottom of the ocean. We on the Atlantic happen to have a tremendous advantage in that we have an offshore shelf that's about 25, 30 miles. So there's a lot of fairly shallow ocean between 60 and 25 or 30 meters deep. So it's 30 meters is 100 feet and 60 is 200. And they can anchor in 200 feet of water. But when you get out deeper, anybody know what the advantage of getting out into deeper water is? The wind is more reliable. The daggone wind blows a lot out there. Here,
Jay, I have a
yes.
question. Maybe I'm just not looking at it right, but why do the ones farther north, why are they farther away from land?
Couple of reasons.
Why was that, yeah.
A couple of reasons, and you just named the first one a while ago. People don't like to see the windmills.
Well, that was what I was wondering, why the ones off of Bethany were allowed to be in so much closer. Who drew that map?
Because these are old leases. They've been, you got to read the background. This one, Skipjack, was leased like in 2008. And then outfit called, well, we just talked about that. Blue Water gave up their lease. They let it go back because they were paying like $90,000 a year just for this little area that's purple here. And they never thought they could develop it, so they let it go back. And then Ørsted came along, but it wasn't Ørsted. GSOE came along and picked it up. And then GSOE let go of half of it. So half, the purple half that you see down here, only came to be owned by Skipjack 2 or 3 years ago. And they're paying about $90,000 a year for this little triangle. US Wind, it's the yellow one down here. They're paying $200,000 a year, leasing their. They want to get their permits in and start building windmills as fast as they can. But that's just a pittance of what it's going to cost them to develop that. Dominion, who has fairly reliable numbers now, they figure it's going to be almost $10 billion to build the 200 that they have planned off the coast of Virginia, off of Richmond, or off of Virginia Beach. And as you can see, and we just talked about it a second ago, see how these are real population centers, and they're fairly close. This one here is about probably 30 miles out, 25, 30 miles out. These up the top, these are 12, 15 miles out. This one here, the Skipjack and GSOE that we have down here, their lease is about a little over 12 miles out. This one down here, US Wind, that's off of Dewey Beach, is about between 12 and 13. That's the nearest part. Now the furthest out here is like 20 miles away. The US Wind, and I think we talked about it a little bit. The US Wind, which is not Ørsted, this is, they use a different brand of windmills, they're called Vestas. And they are permitted for 17 megawatts. A 17 megawatt windmill is over 1,000 feet high. The Empire State Building is like 1,049 feet. They're as tall as an 80-story building, and or more. So they're going to be tall, really tall, and we'll all be able to see them. And as we remember from watching the workshop that we had, we saw Dr. Firestone. We saw two folks from Delaware, University of Delaware, talk about they weren't too sure that it would do much harm to the tourist business. And then we heard the two people from Ocean City say it was going to kill their tourist business. So that's up in the air. And I won't make any comments about the Rodney Institute, Caesar Rodney Institute fellow. He's going to try to do away with windmills. Probably not going to happen. But so you kind of take what he said with a grain of salt and go forward. However, a lot of people are listening to that because a lot of people don't want windmills. And as I said earlier, I said we never heard kilowatt hour cost mentioned at this meeting. This didn't come up. Oh, we heard about how many jobs we were going to get. We heard about all this good stuff. And we're going to talk about a lot of cons. But we never heard anybody talk about the price of a kilowatt hour of power. And I read an old estimate, which was like 3 or 4 years old, and they thought that it was going to cost at least 25 cents for a kilowatt hour of electricity. I used 1,108 kilowatt hours last month, actually. And we all got our bills all of us who were on Delmarva. And my bill was $154. So if it's 25 cents as opposed to my 14 cents, that's going to raise the price. I'll probably get up over 200. Now, they probably aren't going to increase the supply of the transmission cost that much. But so our bills are going to go way up once we start paying for windmill energy. The great big windmills are much more efficient. We're much more efficient. So that's going to mitigate it the other way. Go, let's talk. You've seen my presentation.
Well, Jay, I have a question. The wind farm that's right off New Jersey, there's multiple, what, eight or 9 of them, whatever it is.
Yes,
Now, is that being fed, that energy that's generated from those wind farms, is that being fed into New Jersey for the benefit of the people who live in New Jersey?
No, right. These New Jersey wind farms, right? Damn it, Jay, here it is.
Right.
These New Jersey wind farms are going to all go together, and their power is going to go in between Ventnor and Ocean City. No, Ventnor and Atlantic City.
Okay.
And those are huge, huge cables. I mean, huge. Because there's going to be probably close to, I don't know, 200 windmills.
So once it gets ashore, where's it going to go from there?
It's going to shore in there's a little park not too far from Ocean City, New Jersey, a little 4-acre park. And these companies, Garden States Offshore Energy, is buying that park from the township, and I don't know what township it is, but it's a township that owns the park. And they're going to bring everything into that park underground, under the floor of the ocean, and they're going to come up in the park, and then they're going to go above ground. And they're going to have huge power distribution lines. If I was in New Jersey, I would tell them to stay underground for another 100 miles or something till they got away from the population center, And we're gonna have the same problem in Indian River. We're gonna get power from at least close to 200 windmills. By the time we get Skipjack and GSOE together, and then US Wind down below, we're gonna have close to 200 windmills out there. And they're gonna be big windmills. And in Europe, if you'll get online, you'll see pictures of the cable that they estimate, because when US Wind filed their construction and operations plan, they had to say how many offshore they're gonna build substations offshore. They're gonna build 2 substations offshore. They're gonna come in under Indian River. That's their number 1 proposal. Their number 2 proposal is to come in out here by the park. You know where the tower is, south of Dewey? That's their second objective, is to come in there. If they come in south of Dewey with their huge cable, they're gonna come up Highway 1 till they get up somewhere out here northwest of town. And they're gonna go toward Maryland. All this power that's US Wind's doing is coming to Maryland. And I don't know where Skipjack and GSOE is gonna sell their power. Their power will probably go to New Jersey. GSOE is a New Jersey-based company. Skipjack's based in Baltimore.
I thought they were coming in by Fenwick Island.
That was where they were planning on it 2-3 years ago. That was the first option of US Wind. And they now have decided that that's gonna be too much of a hassle. So they're planning on coming in under the bridge, under the Indian River Bridge, and going under the bay, under Rehoboth Bay. They're gonna do horizontal drilling like the fracking guys do, and they're going to come up somewhere inland.
But one of the things that I didn't see in any of the presentations, we saw all the windmills out in the water.
Yes.
And some people said you can see them, some people said you can't see
Yes.
them. But regardless, they're going to have to be connected to cables that
They sure are.
we discussed.
They
So-
all have to come, and that's the rub.
But what I didn't see in any presentation is those cables have to be connected to towers.
That's right.
Transmission towers. Where are the towers going to be located on land? Because they're huge, and are they going in neighborhoods? Are they going in parks?
They're gonna go
Where are they
straight
going?
as they can go to wherever their end point is, and that's, I think Skipjack wants to take theirs to Federalsburg, Maryland. Does everybody know where's there, Federalsburg, Maryland?
Yeah.
That's where they want to take the distribution before they spread it out. So those big lines will go
There'll be
to,
a substation? They're going to build a substation?
there'll be
there?
substations there, and there'll be substations along the way. When you have this much power, you just have to keep, you can't go far without building a substation and
Right,
directing
but I
it
mean,
on.
these towers are enormous.
They're enormous.
So
They sure
they're
are.
going to be, I mean, we're concerned about telephone poles ruining our
just gonna say
sight
that,
lines.
yeah.
And we're going to have these huge transmission towers that
They'll be
I don't
huge.
get how they're going to do that, and people will support it. I just don't understand.
They'll be bigger than any distribution stations that we've seen. It's just, when you have 230 kilovolts, I think it's kilovolts. When you have 230 kilovolts that you're pushing, kilowatts maybe, I don't know, but that you're pushing down this wire, it's got to be big, and it's got to be huge, and it's got to be massive to hold those big, heavy cables. So that's coming. And they're going to have substations out here in the water, too.
Jay, you say there's only one wind farm at the moment that's being used down off Virginia Beach.
Dominion built one little small test farm.
What kind of feedback's coming back from there with regards to all the questions that are being asked?
Yeah. I don't know about that. It's not that far off, sure. It's not, their main wind farms in Dominion are 27, 28 miles offshore. Ours are half that. So I don't know what the aesthetic part of it is, and I don't know how that's gone. But they've got them running. They're up and running now.
So how about the cost? The cost to the consumer?
As I said, Dominion said that they could raise the price of the consumer.
25 cents.
No.
25 cents was what I read from an unbiased
Right.
thinking, projecting what he thought, or maybe it's she, what they thought the price of wind energy costs, and that was 2 years ago, and they thought that about the cheapest they could do was 25 cents for a kilowatt hour. And you and I, we're paying about 14 cents right now.
And the
No.
I'm sorry. The question you
go
had
ahead.
said was, and that's the thing, when I kept trying to, get a definite price, I always look at things as, okay, this is gonna cost how many billions of dollars?
Yes.
To build all this, to get everything done, to get into place. That's just all these towers, and then you're
Yes.
gonna have to run all these lines, you're gonna have to go through
Yes.
permitting, you're gonna have to get the easements to go across all this
And they're gonna be
property.
big easements.
Exactly, and I think somebody's gonna be paying for this.
Somebody has to pay for it. And I'll tell you another little story. Dominion, because Dominion's about a year ahead of us. Dominion has calculated that their windmills are going to cost them just under 10 billion, B with a B. So that means that every one of those 200 windmills are going to cost whatever the divisor is. Now that's windmills. The distribution system, the whole thing, the whole package, which is going to take electricity from the ocean, windmills, to their customers, the whole package is going to be $21 billion. So it's going to cost them more than the windmills to get the power structure built on out. I downloaded a copy of the I gave you the reference to. I downloaded the same document from Dominion, and I've been reading all that. And they're ahead of us in construction and a bunch of stuff. There's another problem that they're going to have to face. These vessels that supply these huge windmills have to be really big vessels. And the nearest deep water port that you can't get deep enough in Delaware Bay to haul this big stuff. The nearest deep water port is at Richmond. So they're going to have to come out of there, they said, to service, to construct, to do all this stuff. Now, U.S. Wind has a construction center in Baltimore. So I don't know whether they'll take pieces. I guess the ships will go in there and pick the pieces up at their Baltimore substation and haul them out here to, in their case, out here to the U.S. Wind that's in yellow down there. So that's going to be something that they're going to, but those vessels are going to have to come from somewhere else because they have to be able to really get deep when they put those, these are all going to be anchored on the bottom. So they have to put something that they call upside down cans or something like that on the bottom of the ocean. And then they got to pile rocks around them so that to keep from scouring. You heard Kevin talk about scouring, and so they'll be doing that. And there'll be vessels passing by here all the time. And we have to decide if that's gonna be, if that's gonna affect our tourism or not. I don't know. I don't even know. These are just things that Stan wants to start talking about, and you guys are bringing up more stuff.
And I think it's, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. It's a moving target. I mean,
Sure is.
we don't have concrete fact as, okay, here's our cost, here's what the pass-through is gonna be to all the customers. What's the advantage? If they were to say, if we're paying 14 now, and because we're gonna be putting all this out and looking at it at the long run, we can, keep you there at 14, then I could say, well, maybe we could look at
Well,
it.
oh yeah, I gotta tell you another story. That's what happened to Dominion. They said, we can give you power for, and they gave a percentage for 42% efficiency of these windmills that they're building out in the ocean. In other words, they're saying that they'll produce energy 42% of the time. And that may be why they're out further, but they can bank on that. And so the Virginia legislature said, great, we'll give you a permit if you can do 42%, but you gotta sign a contract. If you go over 42%, you have to take it out of your investors, out of there. And I happen to be an investor of Dominion. So it'd be coming out of my hide. But Dominion wouldn't agree to that. So they're on hold right now. I don't know what's going to happen in Virginia, but they have more concrete numbers than U.S. Wind does. And of course, Skipjack and GSOE have none yet. Steve, did you have something?
I just wanted to make a comment. A couple of weeks ago, 60 Minutes did a segment on wind farms off the coast of England. You saw that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Was that a good show?
It was good. And it didn't get into the nuts and bolts like we're getting into. I was just online here, just reading a comment from the show. They said that there's 300 turbines in the Hornsea wind farm. And it says it helps generate power for more than 2 million homes a day. And one thing that kind of stuck out, it said every rotation.
Yes. They're huge. Those were huge.
Well, every rotation, one rotation powers a house for 24 hours, I think they said in that show. So, I mean, it's
huge.
yeah,
it's huge.
it's a big farm out there. And
When you change oil on one of those turbines, it takes 159 gallons of oil just to put gear oil in it. But nowadays they have synthetics, so they don't have to do that so often. But yeah.
But multiply that by 200, and that's
Unreal. It is unreal. They're going to be coming and going all the time. And that's going to be part of it. We have to decide if it's going to cause if we don't like it, or if we can tolerate it, or do
we stop it?
I have no idea. I talked to Brian Hooker. Do you remember when you watched the wind workshop that Mayor Mills had? There was the head of the EPA BOEM department for this area. I think her name was it Karen Baker? I can't remember, something like that. And she had two folks who came with her. And one of those was Brian Hooker, and he was a long-time person who had worked in this area at the EPA office, which was BOEM. So I asked Brian, I said, what if, and as you recall, the two guys from Ocean City, their problem was aesthetics. They didn't believe that, and they were talking about this one in yellow. They weren't even talking about, they were talking about the Marwind that U.S. Wind has. And they thought that it was too close to them at 13 miles or 12 and a half miles. So I asked him, I said, Brian, I said, my problem is, if you look at Skipjack and GSOE up here, that's right at the mouth of Delaware Bay. It's just crazy to put it there. Anyway, I asked him, is there any way to make these guys move them offshore, further away? He said, yeah. He said they can give up their lease and get one further out. And I said, well, what would it take to make them get out further? And he said, you'll have to have a really strong task force of Delawareans that are pushing hard to make this happen. But he said it's happened before, and I'm wondering if he was talking about the ones we see further north that went way out with their wind farms. Now, see, these are out there close to 30 miles, 28, 29 miles. So maybe that's what he was talking about, but he said it says doable.
Well, it's doable if the commercial companies currently have the rights for these certain
They have
areas
the
in the
right-
water, but it's defined. So they can't move out, because if they move further out, they're moving outside of the area that they've been allotted, and that's the
Right.
problem. So BOEM, my understanding, is BOEM has to approve, they would have to resubmit for new permits further out that
Yes,
BOEM would
yes.
approve.
Yes, and I have a feeling that BOEM would be happy to have them do that, because it gets a lot of really angry people.
Well, that might
And
be
we're going to talk to Senator Carper, we're going to talk to Senator Coons, and we may say bring it on, or we may say get those guys out farther, and that's pressure. When someone as senior as Carper, and Coons is also senior, when they get on EPA, those folks listen, because these guys are on powerful committees. And the same thing with the senators from Virginia or anywhere. So there's a lot of pressure on the EPA to go along and get along. So it's not a lost cause, but I think it's very difficult. Now, if you look at there's another map that I looked at that shows a lot of area, big batches of area out here that is available for
Excuse me, Jay.
for leasing. Excuse me, Craig.
Yeah, two things. So one is, I apologize. My daughter's bus is getting home about 3:30, so I'm going to have to leave. So I apologize for that.
See what get her opinion.
I will get her opinion. But I just want to say probably two things. So one is, I watched the 4-hour marathon.
Yes.
And, I watched it at 2 times speed. So
Yes. Yes, so did I.
It was probably the same thing, right? But I did kind of mentally got stuck when I learned that it was 12 miles out, right? So I don't want to say I ignored the rest of the meeting, which was another 2 hours, but I did listen to bits and pieces of it. Having said that, I think we need to work towards getting it moved further offshore.
I think that's what the mayor thinks.
Whether we're successful or not, we'll figure that out down the road. But I don't think we can have a defeatist attitude at this point. I think we need to. I don't want to. I do feel strongly that cost should be weighed in this, right? You can't, kind of one of the themes you were getting to. If it's going to cost twice as much, does that make sense? We have to have those conversations. But I think, at least for me, the number one thing right now is get it moved further offshore, right?
But we may change our mind. We might change our mind. We might say, nah, it's not that bad. I'd like to drive down and take a look at the 3 that Dominion has put out off the coast of North Carolina, Virginia border. I'd like to go there and see them with my own eyes.
How tall are those?
Those are fairly tall. Those aren't 1,000 feet, but they're 830 feet. So they're pretty tall. They're a heck of a lot taller than that one at Lewis campus.
And for anybody who's driven up the New Jersey Turnpike, which many of us have, you get to a point where you're still a ways away from Lower Manhattan, and you can see, all the buildings in Lower Manhattan.
Yeah.
Right, and based on the renderings I saw, we're getting up there with these
getting-
1,000.
We're getting up there. We're getting way up there. Getting way up there.
So I apologize, but I have to get back on.
We're gonna choose a new date without your input. You have to just kind of hunch over and take it.
Thank you. Take care, everyone.
Take care, Craig. So, what shall we say? What shall we take back?
Need more information.
We need a lot more information. I think we do. What did he tell us to look for? It's in my blue one, and did I take that with? Oh, here it is.
Yeah, that's what I was saying, it's right there.
He said, what benefits do you see in having the project built locally? Jobs, coastal resiliency, increased tourism, other benefits?
We don't know.
Don't know exactly, do we? We'll know a lot more when they get their application in, because they got to spell a lot of that out.
I think
But
they need to answer those questions for us.
and they gave numbers, if you recall, at the workshop. But I just don't know. They were 300 jobs or 500 jobs, and you just don't know whether they'll get more accurate. They get a lot more accurate in this when they do their construction plans.
Right.
But you just don't know. Coastal resiliency. What kind of benefits do we get from coastal resiliency? We get. They're not producing any carbon. They're not producing any methane. They're not producing any water vapor. They're not producing any greenhouse gas at all. I'm not sure that affects our resiliency, but it contributes to increased benefits for climate change.
We have operational cost of
That too, I don't know what the
the
operational
boats have to go
cost-
in and out for service.
That's right.
And
Are those people going to do their shopping in Rehoboth? They might. If people, I wonder how many permanent people will be working at these stations.
Or they're just gonna be crews that keep going up and down the coast, servicing all these things, and they just live on the ship and back and forth and back and forth.
That's what they're doing now.
Right.
I'm not sure. In fact, that's how they do it. They have these dormitory ships
Right.
that just go out there and stay. Did they show those on 60 Minutes?
No, they did show there was one girl they kind of centered around as far as, she was like technician, and she was climbing up and down the towers or the windmill things. And they showed how hard it was in a rough sea, in a windy sea, to actually dock the boat close enough to one of these for her to transfer onto that and climb up. I think it was like 80 feet to the first level, and then going up from there. So, depending on the sea conditions, it can be kind of rough to do any servicing on those.
So there's that. It'd be interesting to know how many of those folks are going to live around town and shop in our grocery stores and frequent our restaurants. I'd love to know that.
We can't find service workers
Yeah.
in Rehoboth.
Yeah.
Where are they going to find
Cost prohibitive.
skilled labor? And from what I read as well, a lot of it's union,
Yes.
a lot of it's minority.
I'm
Where are
pretty
they
sure it's
going to
pretty
find these
high-paid la-
people?
I'm sure it's high-paid labor, though.
That'll be high paid.
Yeah.
But the people that they bring in with their money, it's just hard to know. It's hard to know how much I'm sure during construction, it'd be interesting to know if we'll have increased business because of it.
But it's also a lot of supposition versus facts. Again, the consultants came out and said that the commercial companies are claiming that there are going to be extra jobs, lots of new jobs. But then the studies from the University of Delaware, from another consultant, said that's not true. But no one, so we don't, there just
know.
aren't any facts.
Yes,
It's
that's right.
all, what, it might be this, we think it might be that, but there's no facts.
As Dominion gets further along with their project, and as I said, they're about a year ahead of us, as they get further along, they'll find out a lot of the information that we're.
And it's about tourism. They keep claiming that there's going to be lots of tourism. And
I have no
again, the
idea.
university study, if we are going to go by that, said that isn't going to increase tourism, that no one's going to come to Rehoboth to look at windmills. It just isn't, it isn't going to be done.
Well, maybe initially they will, because they'll want to see what
Yeah.
everyone's complaining about. But once they see what they see they don't like, then tourism's
Drops.
Maybe.
gonna go down.
It's
Well,
hard
that
to
was
know.
part of the study from
Right.
University of Delaware. They said that the survey they took, when they showed pictures of what it looked at night, 54% of the people they surveyed said they would not come back because of it.
Right.
And,
Which I thought was interesting.
yes, and the pictures they took were not, or that they put together, were not of 17, 18 megawatt towers.
Right.
They were like 650 feet.
Well, I think the
630
easy
feet.
question, or the easy answer to a lot of our questions are just jump on any social media and follow people if they're on vacation or something like that, and they'll take a picture and say, wow, look at this view. I highly doubt you're gonna see anybody
Maybe.
go, look at that windmill.
Right. And imagine it at night. The other thing I learned, and I didn't realize this, is not only will the towers of the windmills be lit up,
They're illuminated.
but then there are thousands of buoys that will be in the water blinking to protect, to keep people from, well, to keep vessels from going into
Hitting
the
them.
area and to keep planes from flying into them. So there's a danger there, I think, that needs to be looked at. But who wants who
That
wants
goes
all
back-
those buoy lights and
That goes
be
back
out
to
there?
our bright sky.
It's going to be Christmas every day, every night.
But the horizon is what, 11, 12 miles line of sight?
Yes. Well, they.
Again,
except
they
for
showed
given the other
they
side of
showed
that.
two different visuals, right?
Yeah, but if they're 1,000 feet tall,
You're
they
still
gotta go
gonna see-
past.
Yeah, you'll see something, but buoys, probably not.
Probably not.
Not from the coast.
I talked to a fellow, and I might bring him in to talk to us. He is the CEO, president of a shipping company called Vane Brothers Transport. And they own, he said, 130 tugboats. And they go all over the US and anywhere on the ocean. And they pull barges. He said they go into Baltimore and they'll pull a barge if it's only going like to Richmond or to Wilmington, North Carolina. He said for short distances, they pull a lot of, they can pull a lot of weight with these barges. And he said it's gonna just destroy him coming out of Delaware Bay. He said in the wintertime, the seas are so rough that if you're pulling a barge, you'll have to just do something else. So he's working with the Coast Guard to try to figure out if he can do anything about anything. He just doesn't know yet. But he said there's just no room between the Skipjack lease and the Delaware shore to get through there and to stay in water deep enough even for his tugboats. To stay in deeper water, you got to get really close to that lease area. And he said if the seas are rough, he's just going to have.
There's too many unknown factors. I mean, you just brought up another one. We just, we locked in, okay, yeah, you have a lease to do your windmills. Do you have a lease on all the rest of the land to get it to where all this power is going to be processed? So I think, right now we're just second guessing it ourselves. I think we need to go back to the company and just say we need definitive answers.
The guys who are leasing who are trying to buy the little 2-acre, 3-acre park near Ocean City are donating like $500,000 or something like that to, it's not Dartmouth. What university would be near Ocean? New Jersey University, for their marine biology program. So they're willing to do stuff.
Roland, maybe, or?
Yeah, there's Roland, and then there's, I mean, Princeton's up there, but
It's not that, it's somebody we know about. Could be, could very well be. Anyway, I was reading that
there's
this
too
morning.
many questions.
They're kicking in a few bucks
Yeah.
to keep it going. And as you recall, US Wind offered to do that at Fenwick. They offered to do a bunch of stuff. And I'm not sure why they decided not to do it. I don't know why that fell apart.
Is there a operational farm up in New England that is actually working?
There's one called I think it's called Bird Island. It has 6 windmills, and they're short windmills. They're like 2 megawatts apiece.
Okay.
But they got one that's going up there. It's 3 miles off of this island.
Just wondering how that has affected their tourism,
I don't know. It's fun. It'd be fun to find out.
you know?
I know.
Okay.
Would you like to invite me to the mic? I can help out.
You can say anything you want. You're welcome to.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate you letting me take a few minutes. I don't know how much time we have.
Oh, wait, not yet.
How's that?
You're good. You're
Very
on.
good. Yes, the Block Island Wind Farm.
Identify yourself.
That's it. Rock Island.
Block Island is off the.
Block Island. That's it.
Block Island is off the coast of Rhode Island. There's a lot of
Right.
island stuff up there. And I was particularly interested in that, being a proponent of wind farms, to go up and see. In fact, they did a survey of local Airbnb places. The numbers went up.
Could you identify yourself, please?
Oh,
we
I'm
know?
so sorry.
That's okay.
Here I am assuming that everybody knew me. I'm Charlie Garlow of 82 Sussex Street. Pay no attention to him. He ran for city commissioner once, lost. I live at the 5th and Sussex Street, please. Yes, sir. Block Island off of Rhode Island has increased the number of people who come to the island, witness the numbers of reservations at Airbnb places, because people like me are techno nerds.
look.
And they want to take a look and see what these things are. Pretty interesting, just like going to the Grand Canyon. You want to take a look and see what it looks like. And to me, they're beautiful. They're tall. They're slender. They're white. They're like a giant Tai Chi that's lovely to look at. Unlike, here's a cartoon from the Cape Gazette, the big rusty tankers, much closer to the shore, much more visible. It got Yang written in 20-foot tall letters on the side, letting you know you're buying junk from China, our enemy. So I'm very much opposed to all these other things that are out there in the ocean making us look ugly. But, you know, people don't run away from Rehoboth Beach saying, oh, how ugly Rehoboth is. Why? And the airplane zooming along with their, 50% off at the martinis and, all the other ugly stuff that's on our beach. We ignore it because we're there at the beach to enjoy the beach and the waves and kids and parents jumping up and down in the waves and building sandcastles and seeing ghost crabs and other sorts of fun stuff at the beach. That's why people go to the beach. They don't look at the ugly stuff. They just tune it out. They figure that's just part of the beach. And the same will be true of wind turbines, I suggest. They're supposed to be about the size of a dime, held at your arm's length. And they had plenty of these signs out here the last time that Mayor Mills and all you commissioners were here and we had all the testimony. And it doesn't look like much to me. In fact, people will probably ignore them too. On a hazy day like today, you probably won't be able to see them at all. So to my mind, the visual argument is defeated by this cartoon, if you will. And for those who are thinking, oh, they'll leave Rehoboth Beach, well, where are they gonna go if they wanna go to the beach? Up to New Jersey, where they're gonna have plenty of wind farms to look at too. So they'll probably stay here because Rehoboth is such a wonderful place. If I may address some of the other issues like costs, when Professor Willett Kempton, who's from the University of Delaware, he gave his report, the SIOW, the Special Initiative on Offshore Wind, he pointed out that he was a consultant to the folks in Massachusetts and New York who he advised them to get a competitive bids. Don't do like Dominion, have one bidder, have several bidders so that you get a lower price. Same as you would if you're putting a deck on your house. You get a couple of different bids to make sure you've got the lowest price.
Who should he be going to?
I'm sorry?
Tell me who he should, I'm thinking you saying that Dominion should be getting competitive bids on their $10 million or $10 billion that they're spending for their windmills?
Anybody who's getting windmills or
Tell me
decks
who-
on your house,
Tell me, give me some names.
who would they get bids from? All these people up and down here. These people are all in the business of building wind farms. They could have gotten bids from them.
There's no contractors listed in these names. These are all middlemen.
Well,
They all have,
whoever the right person is
middlemen.
that's when it's associated with them that can prepare a bid could be able to give a bid. In fact, that's what Dr. Kempton was saying. If the bids come in too high, if they come in at 25 cents a kilowatt hour, like you're suggesting, we can just tell them, no, thanks, we're not interested.
if
Instead,
you are an energy company and you're building a windmill,
Yep.
do you think you might get the lowest bid?
I think that they're trying to get the best bid they can that's the lowest amongst the competitors, so they'll win the contract.
Do you think Dominion did that?
I'm told that they did not. I haven't reviewed all of their documents and their contracts.
They did that.
They did have
they're
competitive bids?
They're building these as cheap as they can.
Well, it's entirely possible that that's the case, and I may have to correct the record
So
there.
you're going to have to correct.
Very good, sir. But as to the contracts that were signed contracts with Massachusetts and New York, the prices came in under 7 cents per kilowatt hour. If we could be able to get the same thing if we had competitive bids.
Are you aware of why the Blue Water contract tanked?
Well, I wasn't living here at the beach at that time, but I'm told that it was because of the financial crisis of 2007, 8, and 9, the housing crisis went boom.
It was because they couldn't make the numbers come out.
Right. A lot of people were saying they're backing out because of the
And
finances.
that's why the legislature in Virginia wanted to tie them down to the numbers that they gave. And they would not be tied down, and that's on hold. Now, I don't know whether we're going to have a contract with, I don't know whether Delmarva is going to be for, probably not, because these are Maryland companies.
Yes, these are Maryland companies, and the costs will go to Maryland. So if their costs are slightly higher, as they may very well be because they assist,
They haven't submitted, US Wind is the only one that submitted a plan.
right. And the suggestion is that those costs for US Winds will be slightly higher to the Maryland ratepayers because they insisted that they have jobs at the old steel mill plant, which may have jacked up their costs somewhat to accommodate that desire for jobs, more jobs in Maryland. So that's why they may be paying slightly more. On the other hand, if we in Delaware would like to have a wind farm of our own,
The estimate that I saw was double.
well, that's not what I've seen. It's
I can show you,
Professor
I can show
Kempton's
you where that came from.
Professor Kempton's survey showed that the Maryland costs for these,
I did not
that are
see
here.
any of his data.
oh, it's all in the SIOW report. I'd be glad to get you a copy,
I
sir.
would.
I'll give that to you.
Get because I want to see where those numbers are coming from. I don't believe these companies will allow themselves to be tied down.
Well, if they submit a bid for a contract, it's a fixed price contract, and it says 6.8 cents per kilowatt hour for Massachusetts. They're locked into a bid price like that. So there's a concrete number of a signed contract already. New York has another one that's less than 7 cents as well. So those people got a good price by being smart, taking Dr. Kempton's advice on how to set these things up. We ought to be able to do the same thing and get reasonable
How much
costs.
is Block Island costing to produce?
Block Island, how much does they cost for theirs? Well, I don't have that cents per kilowatt hour number right in front of me, but I'm told that it was a lot less than what they were paying before, because before they were having diesel generators make the electricity, which were noisy and smelly
Let's
and cost a
compare
lot more.
apples to apples.
Yeah, so that's not necessarily a good idea to look at their costs, because their
Our
costs may have been
problem
higher.
here- Our
'cause they're-
problem here is that we can't get solid data, and that's what the mayor wants us to do. We can get all kinds of opinions.
Well, there's,
We can have people come and show us cartoons, but we need data. We need
it's
real-
all there in the SIOW report from Dr. Kempton, and I'll,
No, but what-
And if
I
it's
think
got
that-
real data in it,
Yeah, if that report has the data, then we can then turn back to the companies who are supposedly giving us a contract and
We sure
saying, you
can.
need to lock us in exactly how this is, so we know not only what your cost is, but we want to see what the benefit will be to the citizens of Rehoboth Beach.
well, the citizen,
Not finished yet.
sorry.
the Dominion Company is one of the biggest power companies in the world. If they can't agree on a fee that they advertised, something's wrong.
Right.
Something's really wrong.
That's the problem that if you do a lot of research on this, and especially with the first one, that when they wanted to partner with Delmarva and everything else, I know for a fact it wasn't because of the recession. It's because they couldn't get their numbers under control. And I think that's the big problem that we have, is that, you know, okay, we'll look at something, but we don't want, let's throw everything up against the wall and see what sticks. Before we make any decision that's going to impact the city of Rehoboth Beach, we need absolute, definite, concrete answers. To go back to the cartoon there too, the ships move. These are going to be permanent. And the airplanes move.
I think that I think wind power is going to be great
Correct.
because the floating, if you take a look at the literature that's out there, the floating windmills have a lot more potential than these that are cheaper and are anchored, because they can get out with the wind. And California has no continental shelf, nor does northern New England. If we can get floating windmills, we may be in business.
I'm all in favor of floating windmills, but right now, the BOEM people, it's not EPA, it's the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, haven't listed any areas that are out there off the continental
Oh, yes, they
shelf.
have. If you look at the map,
There's a dotted line going around where they're contemplating putting those matters out for lease, but they haven't signed any leases with anybody out of those areas.
that's true. But those are up. Those areas are up. We're in Area A here. And if you look at the BOEM has an interactive map. If you'll dial that up, and if you'll look at that map, you'll see they got a huge bunch of lease available that's out north of the New Jersey group there. And when I talked to Hooker, he said EPA would be happy to work with anybody that wants to get off the shelf and get into deeper water. So I think that's doable. I think we got a path forward.
I agree with you, Commissioner. It is doable to build those wind farms offshore wind. They've been doing them in Scotland, offshore floating turbines.
Yes, they are.
So we should be able to do the same.
They are. We can do the same thing.
But right now, we're in the process of looking at these wind farms that are being proposed, of which the Maryland ratepayers, not Delaware ratepayers, will be paying whatever costs come from that electricity. People in Maryland, the legislature in Maryland, in their wisdom, decided they were willing to pay a slightly higher cost so that they would be able to meet their renewable portfolio standard requirements and to get all those nice jobs up at the old steel mill. It's a major
Just don't know.
feature.
The steel mill has only 50 jobs, I think I read this morning. But that's 50 they didn't have. And it's progress.
It certainly is. It's progress in forms of jobs, in form of clean energy, and stopping global warming, all those sorts of things. And it may very well be good in terms of costs, because if we get costs that are like they did in Massachusetts and New York, that'll be less than we're paying now here on your bill, so your bill will be smaller. And in fact, if we get more wind turbines built out off the continental shelf like that, we'll have extra power we can sell, like an export crop, to people in Pennsylvania and make even more money for us.
Yeah, I doubt if that's going to happen. But we're producing good, clean energy, and that helps. It'll take 300 years for the greenhouse gas to back down to where we can see progress. But it'll only take about 70 years for us to get rid of our carbon dioxide. So that's progress.
That's good, thank you. And if I may address some of the other issues like lights at night, the buoys will be down very close to the water. So it'll be practically impossible. The lights, the buoys that you were afraid would be, they'll be beyond the curve of the earth. You won't be able to see the things that are that low in the water. But the tall things, yes, you'll be able to see them. And at nighttime, my wife and I take a walk down to the beach in Boardwalk. We'd like to look out and see what there is to see at nighttime. And guess what's out there? Lots of lights are out there, and they're on these big boats, these Yang boats, these cargo vessels that are rusty out there. There's 8 or 10 of them out there, all red lights, and they're moving around. And I'm thinking, well, if that hasn't ruined tourism yet, if there's not going to be any tourism impact from things that are even farther from the shore with lights that only turn on when an airplane is approaching. It's like one of those motion sensing light switches you might have on your front porch. That way, the lights that are on to warn airplanes are only on for about 2% of the entire time at night. So, and who's flying an airplane at the middle of the night this low, close to the water, you wonder? Most international flights are going much higher altitudes, and they're going over to London or wherever they're going. So there are probably not going to be any even close calls with those who are able to fly their airplanes at night. Let's see, we talked about costs. We talked about Rhode Island. The big vessels, yes, indeed, the big vessels will be coming out of the Port of Baltimore, and they're able to, I'm not an engineer to know what the depth of the water is there, but they're suggesting that all those vessels they'll need for building these wind farms can be brought all the way from Baltimore.
I think the pieces can, the article that I read said that the only real deep water ports that we had was south in the Richmond area. I can bring that article.
That'd be great if we have some jobs for people in Richmond. I've got some friends in Richmond. I'm glad to have them have some economic vitality as well as Baltimore and us too. If I don't know how much time you're going to grant me to go through the list of points that we talked about. If you'd like to go back to the company and get better information, though, don't just listen to Charlie. Re-invite Mike Dunmeyer, former commissioner of Dewey Beach, who's the gentleman you were probably referring to from U.S. Wind. Great guy, very helpful, always glad to come back and give you more information.
Employee of U.S. Wind.
Yes, he is. He's an employee of U.S. Wind now, but he's a former commissioner from Dewey Beach, so he's a local, someone I think you might be willing to hear and trust. Oh, there's
We're
also
trying to get unbiased
Well,
opinions.
it goes to the whole thing is, the
We've
key
heard those
is
guys
we
talk already.
we need facts. It doesn't, if this gentleman whose name you just gave, who's with Dewey Beach, who's with US Wind, can give us the facts and answer every question, cross every T, dot every I, we're more than willing to accept it.
That's great.
Right now, we can't get it.
Well, I'd be glad to give you Mr. Dunmeyer's contact information so that you could invite him, or Chris Basin, who you may know from the Delaware Center in
To work for
Worsted.
Skipjack.
Right.
Yes, and he likewise would be glad to come and talk with you about all the facts that you might like to have an access to. Last,
I'm going to be bad-mouthing Skipjack. We're trying to get unbiased information.
Right.
That's why we're asking tough questions.
Dr. Kempton, likewise, is a person who might will be able to come and talk to you. He's not biased. He doesn't own any stock in any of these companies.
You're
So,
not making believers out of us.
well, if I may, just to conclude, you might have noticed that not too many days ago, the Environment Committee, which advises the mayor and commissioners, met under the auspices of Edward Cherznowski, our chairperson. I'm the vice chair. We voted unanimously to recommend to the mayor and others that we favor wind farms with the caveat that steps be taken to minimize the environmental or visual impact. And I think that was a fair compromise between those who might be concerned about those topics and those who want to promote good, clean air and healthy air and saving people from having asthma attacks. My daughter and my wife are both asthmatic, so it's important to me personally. But there's a lot of cleaning up of the regular dirty pollution air that we can avoid, as well as global warming pollution. I think I should stop there. I've maybe worn out my welcome with you all.
You're closing in on 4:00.
Thank you, that's fine.
Thank you, Mr. Garlow. Thank you.
Thank you
Thanks,
for hearing
Charlie.
me out.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Appreciate it. We knew you would be in favor because we heard Ed talk at the meeting. So we were pretty sure he'd be in favor. It's great. It's great. I think there's a path forward that's going to be fantastic. We just have to flesh out all the negatives. What I'm thinking, how far are we, Ann? Oh, we're 11 minutes. Let's talk about changing our meeting dates. We were just talking about that a little bit before the meeting. I just checked to see which Fridays, and there are no meetings on the last Friday of the month. Should we try to work a Friday?
Yeah.
Either the third or fourth Friday? Would you
Either's
come in the
fine.
morning?
So it's the day,
Yeah.
Third
Oh.
Friday is Mayor and Commissioner.
Or, yeah, I might say the Friday after the mayor and commissioners meeting. Sometimes they meet at,
That's
That's the day after Thanksgiving, isn't it? Isn't it the day after? You're talking November 25th?
You're gonna
The
run into a
25th.
problem in November and December because of
Correct.
the holidays.
okay. What about the Friday after that, or the Friday before? The commissioners meet at 2. There are times when,
The Friday before that is planning commission.
So December 2nd is booked? Is that what you're saying? December 2nd?
Second Friday of the month is planning commission.
That's the
Third Friday,
the second Friday, the planning commission meets early, don't they?
they meet at 2:00.
Oh,
9?
so that morning might be open. But I was looking at the last Friday, and almost all of them were open. Let's just,
That's what I'm saying, November and December, you're gonna run into a problem with the holidays.
yes. Well, we'll just not have meetings on those months. We talked about staying with our 2-hour meetings and having them less frequently.
Okay, so you're looking at the last Friday of the month and not including November and December.
Yeah, I thought I just looked at November, December. What's open?
I can't pull up the portal.
Well,
So you're talking about the last Friday in
I just
January
happened to
is
look
the
at the last
27th?
Fridays.
Friday of November is November 25th.
Right.
That's
That's the day after Thanksgiving.
And that's a holiday.
Right.
Okay, so we're having Friday in October right now, or we're having Tuesday in October right now. So what do you think, Ann? What would be a good,
Well, I don't suggest that you make any plans for a meeting between December 25th and the first of the year.
yeah, you're probably right.
People are traveling at that time.
You're probably, that's probably right. Look, and perhaps that's a good thing to think about not doing.
So is January 6th available in 9 AM?
I would have to look on the portal, I don't have access to.
Oh, okay.
Why don't we just look and see what's available on the Fridays if we're talking about in January, once we have something?
Yeah, I thought I did a while ago. Let me look again. I hate to drag this out.
I don't think there's anything scheduled for the first Friday of the month.
And we did talk about 9 AM versus afternoon.
Yes, we did. Let's look at January of 22. Oh crap, this is January 23.
That would be January 6th, is the day you want to look at.
January of 2023 is the 6th, the first Friday. The 13th, we have a meeting, and the 27th, it looks like it's open, Ann,
It's the first Friday.
which is the last Friday of January.
Right.
Do you guys want to meet early in the morning, or you want to continue with, would it be easier for you in the morning as opposed to 2 o'clock in the afternoon?
Either one is fine.
Either one's okay. Let's try 9 o'clock on the 27th of January of 2023.
Okay, so you're gonna have that as a standing,
You want to us try to do that? Let me look at February.
we can do, I don't know of any meetings that are held on the last Friday of the month.
Well, that's kind of why I was thinking about it.
I can go ahead and schedule all your.
You want to give it a go? That would be January 27th, February 24th.
So what are you gonna do about March? That has 5 Fridays.
And
Let's try the 31st of March.
yeah, as long as it's the last Friday.
It works. And now, what I think we might do, we meet January and then not meet again until March and have 2-hour meetings starting at 9. Is that a hassle for you?
What is that?
2 hours starting at 9.
No, I can do that,
Okay,
but I will cut you off at 11.
that's good. That keeps us
That's what we need.
honest. And I think it's a great idea, and I mean that sincerely. So we're doing January 27th, March 31st, and then let's skip April and hit May 26th. And we'll all structure our meetings for 2 hours.
May the 26th will be Memorial Weekend. That's
Do we care?
That's gonna be a real busy week, especially for me anyway.
The 19th of May is gonna have somebody on, but that's in the afternoon. Let's think about that some more. Let's do either the May 19th or May 26th at 9 a.m. and decide which one we want. And then Stan will boot us out of it. He better not. We're leaving Tuesday behind, Ann. We've been tramped on too many times.
So you're saying May 26th? Is that what you're saying?
Do you rather do May 19th? There's nothing on there yet.
Fine,
It would work better for me.
At 9 a.m.?
sure.
Let's cross off 26th. So we're looking at January, March, May.
And February, January, February, March.
We're not meeting in February.
Every other month,
Not meeting, every other month? Oh,
Yeah.
Wow, okay.
longer, but less frequent.
And we're having a longer meeting.
Okay,
And then July, we'll talk about July some other time.
Around it, yeah. We're good?
Any more comments? Charlie, are you good?
I'm good all the time. Spunky as a monkey and perky as a turkey.
I declare this meeting adjourned.
Second, so moved. Thank you.
We almost made it.